All right.
Looks to me like we're casting.
It does. Excellent. Let me get the YouTube stream running. All right.
Oh, screencast.
Yeah. Yeah.
Got there. They got there same speed as you, maybe just a little bit faster. That's my
All right.
favorite quote.
We're going out. We're going out correctly on YouTube. Yes.
Richard, have you ever seen MacGruber?
I have seen MacGruber in pieces as GIFs, I think, almost in its entirety, but I've never actually sat down and watched the movie. I keep thinking I should watch.
Yeah. We need token persistence for pretty much everything long term. It's not only data persistence, but it's, if people want DeFi, that sort of thing, well, you need the ability to keep the tokens on chain. So important. Two, you want to tackle this? You want me to tackle this? We got a list.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose we'd mentioned before we're looking at moving, deprecating the site and moving everything into a kind of singular experience for Saito. And so the next big step of that is obviously we've got the ability to host a simple web page, but it's to take that the next step and get some of the dynamic content and blog stuff ported across.
Yeah, we're looking at, we don't like the Saito.tech site. I know a lot of people have complained about it in the past. We all agree. It's never been
4 years old.
The way it curates and displays content by default, but also has these really intuitive controls. So you'll have seen those two categories coming in at the top.
Yeah.
I don't like the names for you and everything, but there's going to be one. So we're going to fix this because it's technically both of them are customized for you, right? Both of them are getting tweets from the feeds that you care about.
Yeah.
Both of them are respecting your decentralized moderation policies. The difference really is that this one of them is kind of a fire hose of everything. And the other, it's like, well, you're maybe a newbie to Red Square. We want it to reflect positively on the project. We don't want to show like shitcoin trolls to someone who's coming in and interested in Saito. So one is going to be a slightly, I don't want to say tweak, but like the server will do some, one of the servers you're getting content from will actually try to be approximate.
In their moderation, that you're more towards the curation side, see where that goes. So there's lots happening on that front.
We got an ATR module. This is part of the token persistence security at low transaction volume. I've shared a screenshot on Red Square previously.
Yep.
What we're doing now is we've updated consensus to track a lot more information about what the average fees are. What are the average fees of new transactions? What are the average fees paid by old transactions? So we're calculating the variance, all of this stuff, and there's a new block explorer kind of, it's called the ATR module. We're using this in-house for testing. So the first thing is we're making sure that all of these values are correct, and we're using it to do things like create fake blockchains and confirm that in all of these edge cases, the variables are as they should be. You know, like the rebroadcasting fees aren't sticking way too high. This is part of the token persistence work, but it's also a step towards a more sophisticated block explorer. Richard?
Yeah, well, I think there's stuff around that. Like, I think people will start seeing kind of feature completeness in the things they expect or that you need around a blockchain when you're relying on it, right? With that permanence aspect we're talking about. So ability to go back anywhere and find any transaction, et cetera, those features are coming in slowly.
We remove transactions from blocks after a certain amount of time. So if you want those blocks, you've got to reload them from disk. We're not going to store a petabyte in memory for anyone.
Yeah, we're not going to have the sole node requirement where you have to spend $15 a second on your node just to keep it up. So we're kind of working on that toolkit and stuff. But fun fact, I think we've had bits and pieces of AI-assisted code in the code base before around UI and stuff. I had a fun time adding paging to the Explorer using a cursor kind of dev tool. Kind of cool, fun experience. The funny thing is having to explain to it like the peer-to-peer nature of the software, just like a new dev coming into the ecosystem. You know, you have to explain this code is running in the browser. It's not server-client model. So you actually have to teach it the same thing as you do anyone who's coming from that traditional like Web2 development model how to shift. I think this one part of the reason I'm doing that is to learn what's possible, but I think some of that we can help people with in future by
work being down, and that's not true at all. Like there's actually a couple of nodes, and most of the nodes were happy and running, and the blockchain was processing. So one of the things is it's important, I think, to educate or to talk about this just so that people understand. But second, it's in the case of last week, there's sometimes a deliberate decision to do this because it's the best way for us to do development and bug hunting. So some people watching this may not have been aware that last week was an exciting week and Richard got a bit less sleep. Richard, do you want to tell us what happened?
Well, I think it's an interesting. So yeah, first of all, the when people were seeing some downtime, the underlying blockchain was still chugging along, producing blocks, communicating, etc. What was happening was it was because we're ramping up different things like use of archive and the interaction between the UI and Red Square. And
we can't replicate it except on prod under load. And this is one of the reasons why the roadmap is what it is. We talked about dog food and we talked about building transaction growth. It's because it surfaces issues that you're not going to find in a lab, issues like this. And so that's why last week a lot of our effort was on this. We found the issue, by the way. We found what we think is the issue. That's why things are much more smooth now. As before, like you may not have noticed, unless you were logging in between about 3 a.m. and 5 a.m. Thai time, because that's when someone wouldn't have been around to kind of take care of the server if it fell over. But yeah, having a live server to test is important. We've now got dev effort, even though we've gone through the bug and we think we fixed it. We're putting dev effort into making sure we can replicate the problem at will, because it's only if
cleaning house mode, and we did tighten up a bunch of things around the place just in the investigation process, things that we knew needed attention. So in the end, really positive.
You should share that sexy little server load graphic you shared on dev this morning.
It's nice. The 7-day view is nice. I'll show people that.
You can see that like before the server is a little bit busy, and then it's like after the bug hunting and upgrade, it's like smooth sailing. So let's move on. We've got a bunch of small stuff. Maxime and Wesley were pretty pivotal in re-highlighting for the Elrond community that we exist. Richard, something happened?
So we'd had interactions with the Elrond guys ages ago, the now Multiverse X guys, and that had kind of petered out after we'd sort of pointed out we'd need certain things on their side. Just really great for Maxime and Wesley to get back onto that, to resurface that. That got to the attention of some folks at the Elrond side. We had a quick but really productive call last night where I think they were really surprised how much is going on our side and some of the the things we've achieved in our space. So I think we'll keep that going.
Things like the apps that aren't possible to build on a smart contract system.
Things like video call.
If things are theoretical, people approach partnerships as hype, I think.
Yep.
And it's pushed them, I think, to realize, no, actually, there are fundamental things with DPKI that you're not doing in a sharded smart contract system. So that's great.
So I think we'll keep talking.
Don't tell us we're not going to tell you the limitations because often there aren't any. There's 10 or 20 different ways of structuring things. Do you want to run a server? Do you not want to run a server? Does your app require objective information in the environment that everybody fetches? Or can everyone's view of truth be partial, right? Like, is the information stored in the wallet? So if you want to do something like this, the reason I'm flagging this is if you want to do something, the best way to engage with us is to tell us what you want to do. Because when people come to us and they say, oh, I'm kind of interested in doing, and it's a vague idea, that's not as helpful for us as this is exactly what I want to do.
And we can't be as helpful. So I think that's the thing. We've built out examples of most of the kinds of applications you have out there on the network. We're pretty solid about developing.
Help me do it. And it's like, actually, you can flesh out the idea. Like, what's
it helps. Yeah, it helps you realize what you do and don't need, et cetera, et cetera. I
Yeah,
think that's
and
really
it helps
key.
us realize sometimes we can look at like a mock UI, a mock UI, and we
Yeah.
suddenly know something that you're not articulating that you know. Like
Yeah.
you need this piece of information, or you need a menu to do this. It can be general things like, do you need the wallet function? Because you can build a Sato app that doesn't
Yeah.
have that wallet slide-in menu. Do you want that? If you want that, do you want the red square? Do you want that stuff in it? Because maybe you want a self-contained app. So
Yeah.
please feel welcome to take the lead. The stuff Maxime and Wesley have done is great. The stuff these other devs are doing, interesting. And because this guy had done enough of the groundwork that he was able to say, well, look, here's a website. They're doing this. It's really interesting. Here's this approach. I don't really necessarily know how this might hook in with Saito. We had a conversation, and that pushed this particular problem from something that would require maybe a week of Richard and my time digging into it, finding out is this viable, to something where we're like, okay, we're going to spend an hour or two looking at it, and we've cast it out as an exploratory project. And so we're hoping to find out in about 2 days whether it's possible to put a demo of this up on Saito and how much time it will take to do this. I want to flag this as the really productive way of engaging with us, because what you're doing is you're helping us know the boundaries, right? It's understanding the problem space. It's understanding how Saito can relate to this area where we can provide solutions that are related to being a PKI network.
Yeah.
So, often people are like, well, I'm not a coder, or it's too technical, or it's too challenging. And it's like, actually, if you're capable of understanding that you want something or you think something's valuable, you can do a lot of the groundwork just on that basis.
Yeah. Well, I think
Because
it's also thinking about the space and where where Saito's capabilities offer something really unique in the space. We could, again, this is one of the reasons in my mind for not pursuing the DeFi space as hard as possibly we could, because it's very crowded. There's a lot of people doing DeFi apps that are cross subsidized by token issuances, and it's very hard to compete with that. And it's not necessarily where we're going to win. Whereas
their impossibility proofs do things like they say X is an optimal price level. We're going to give the block producer a temporary monopoly over producing a block. And then they start playing intellectual games of moving the price around. So it's kind of a bullshit game, but these are the formal ways that they are understanding the problem. And Saito breaks all of those rules, right? Like, if you start playing around and modifying the fees, you can't give the block producer a temporary monopoly. So the very framework that they're using to define the problem and create these impossibility proofs is just steamrolled, and it disappears to nothing. But they have problems understanding it, because as soon as you leave the auction mechanism, the intellectual tools that they have for quantifying and formally proving things stop working, right? And so this is kind of the challenge that we're going.
KOLs or other things like that.
Yeah.
So it's a different approach to other projects, but it's worth our time because of the potential upside for the project, embedding it as groundbreaking across the industry. And there are voices that have huge influence that are involved in reading these academic papers and keeping up with what's going on. So it's not a
It's
small
also
thing.
like one of the huge hurdles that's become clear to me. I'm going to be releasing a video presentation. Richard, we've seen it. We've been working on it. I've realized one of the issues is not that people will ask, oh, well, how do you solve the 51% attack? And we've kind of answered it. But what they're asking us isn't, how do you solve the 51% attack? What they're saying is, I have an intuitive understanding that this problem is impossible. This Leonid Hurwitz, related to some of the work that's coming, where people are saying truthful revelation of preference and mechanism design, mask revelation principle, all of this stuff that, if you're just using Saito, you don't need to care about it. But if we're talking to academics, we need to understand it, because they will disrupt if we don't.
Yeah, I mean, it's the theoretical basis on which the industry is basing the conclusion that you can't do better than proof of work and proof of stake.
Specifically, the reason that they are treating the auction mechanism assumptions the way they're treating them is because of some work in economics that says you need to have a certain kind of auction to get an optimal outcome. And Saito is not an auction. It's kind of like we're moving from the auction back to the free market. So one way I think about the problem is academia has step by step made people have these beliefs because there's something intuitive, right? Like it's a democracy, it's a vote. So we're addressing that, but it's really important so you can help with this. Take a look at us, try to figure out how to digest and adjust this message. But then secondly, also, like Richard said, the academic outreach stuff is really important, and Saito is revolutionary. We are making progress. We're making progress at academic speed. If you guys know, no, like seriously, because we can go to people, we say this and they're going to digest it, and people think about it in the context of the small problems that they can write papers about.
Right.
You guys know computer scientists and academics, economics, whatever, where you can sit down to them, you know how to talk about Saito. You can get them to think about the problem. We will happily talk to them anytime. The biggest issue we have is that people have an intuitive belief that I'd be like, well, what about this? What about that? So
yeah, it's a long road too, but I think we're starting to see some real payoff for patients on that and keeping them going. All right, we better wrap up. I think we're 35 minutes and we're banging up on 40.
Anytime I start ranting about truthful revelation of preference, it's going to stop.
We're gonna have a dedicated Zoomcast for that. I am aware there've been some issues with the stream quality on YouTube. We'll have a dig into those. I'm not sure if it's not just we have extra logging turned on from last week. It may just be that slowing things down along with the stream handling. So we'll look into it. Thank you for your patience watching through choppy video if that's what you've been doing.
It may be the connection too. I'm on the landline here. I think I'm usually on my phone. And we'll see you next week for a Saito Summer update where we'll have new